I have the great honor of introducing a mentor and a friend, Caleb Cage. He was the executive director of before going to the governor's office, he was the executive director of the Nevada Office of Veteran Services. In addition to leading the state's veteran home, veteran cemetery, and veteran service officer program, he established the state's veteran outreach and collaboration effort, known as the Green Zone Initiative, which many of you are familiar with. Before being appointed to this position, Caleb served as a policy advisor in the Office of the Lieutenant Governor with a focus on veteran and rural issues. A Reno native, we actually went to the same elementary school at the same time. Caleb spent 5 years in the United States Army with 2 tours in Iraq. So I'm pleased to introduce to you a friend, a mentor, Caleb Cage.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for that introduction, Ryan. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. As Ryan said, my name is Caleb Cage. I know most of you in here, so I won't go into too much details, but I work with the Office of the Governor, work for Governor Sandoval as his Director of Military and Veterans Policy, and this is something that a group of us have been talking about doing on a monthly basis for just about a year now. I'd like to tell that story here. Our goal in the long run is to bring in good keynote speakers that can attract members of the community and talk about issues in the community, not necessarily veteran related, but people who can really provide those insights. Because this is our first one, you're stuck with me, and I apologize for that. But they do get better, and I'll announce our next speaker here at the end of today's ceremony. So first of all, I'd like to just say thank you to all of you for being here. When you're putting something like this together, as the team did, who really did all of the work on this, you never know how it's going to go. You never know what the response from the community is going to be, and you never know if you're meeting a need. You never know if what you're trying to do is relevant to the target audience, and that's really a theme of this morning. Something we're trying to be is relevant to the veteran community, relevant to the service providers, and relevant to the broader community as well. People who are employers, people who wish to hire veterans, people who wish to help veterans and get to know them as well. So before I get started, let me ask you, how many veterans do we have here? Just raise your hand. We're not going to clap and thank you for your service, so don't worry about that. We get that a lot, but thank you. That's a lot of veterans here today. How many service providers do we have here? And they could be both? Wonderful. What about members of the community who are here just to learn more about what's going on? Got a few of those? Great, awesome, excellent. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you to our hosts here at Harris for this great venue and the great breakfast I think they've provided for us. Mostly I want to thank the student veterans, primarily the student veterans, some VA folks, some folks from the broader community who have really been a part of this conversation for, like I said, about a year now. I'm going to tell the story of how we got here today, and I am timing myself. For those of you who've seen me talk before, I've got 25 minutes, so I'm timing myself. It's not going to go longer than that. Many of you over the last 2 or 3 years have probably heard me talk for long periods of time about the Green Zone Initiative, right? Something that we in a collaborative effort with the community started back in 2012. I'm going to talk a little bit about that this morning, but please don't check out on me. If you've heard that, many of you could probably give the speech by now. We're just going to brush over that and let everybody know sort of how we got here today. Some of the successes we've had, and more important, some of the failures that we've had that have brought us to what I believe is today's great success, tremendous success. We began back in 2012 with a concept called the Sea of Goodwill. Many of you have heard this before. We talk about it all the time. The Sea of Goodwill is this concept. It's coined by the Department of Defense. The Pentagon calls the Sea of Goodwill this unprecedented level of support, services, resources, benefits that are available to service members, veterans, and their families. That's a mouthful, so I'm just going to say veterans going forward. So bear with me, that's what I mean. The whole military-connected community. We've never, in the history of this nation, had more public support for veterans than we have right now. It's incredible the opportunities that are available. It comes from the highest level all the way down to the local level. President Obama has issued policy studies within his government requiring each of his cabinet agencies to brief in cabinet meetings and other staff meetings on a regular basis what each agency is doing to meet his vision for veterans in the state, in the United States right now. So DOL, HUD, Education, all of the other cabinet agencies, including DOD and VA, have a veterans focus. It's really a remarkable discussion that's opened a lot of doors to resources, services, and benefits. First Lady Obama and Joe Biden, Dr. Joe Biden, have created the Joining Community Forces program as their major initiative as First and Second Lady of the United States. They've increased the VA budget. The VA is the one agency whose annual budget has increased by 10% a year for the last 5 years. It's incredible if you think about the economic times we've been in the last 5 years that those kinds of increases have taken place. Truly remarkable. Up to about $160 billion annual budget to serve our veterans. At the national level, there truly are tremendous investments that are being made. More services, more opportunities for access, and more opportunities in general than ever before. We have the same thing at the state and local level as well. We have community service providers, nonprofits, that are trying to fill gaps in state, federal, and local services. We have employers who recognize the need and the value of hiring veterans. We have community members who just appreciate service and recognize the need to welcome people back into our communities and to appreciate our existing veteran population as well. This is the sea of goodwill. Look around you today. This is the sea of goodwill. People who have served, people willing and interested in serving those who have served. Yet there's a disconnect. Outcomes continue to suffer for veterans. Let me give you some examples of what I mean by that. Federal reports show that vocational rehabilitation resources for veterans served, being recognized as having serious barriers to employment, remain about the same year after year. If you read the Department of Labor employment situation for veterans report, which comes out every year as a part of my job, I get to indulge in that fascinating bit of bureaucratic reading. The veteran unemployment rates around the country are remaining about the same. If you look at the studies and the census numbers that show the number of veterans in poverty from 2013, you'll see that they're just about what they were in 2012. So how do we explain this disconnect between the sea of goodwill and continued failing outcomes among veterans? It's the toughest question, in my opinion, from a policy perspective. How do you make sense of that disconnect? Because it just doesn't make sense on its face. And then how do you start to try to come up with ways to address that? Because it would seem that if there's that much interest in making sure our veterans successfully reintegrate into our communities, if there's that much support, then we ought to find a way to match that support with the need. But again, I don't believe we're doing it at a national level. I believe the numbers support that. So in Nevada, back in 2012, April of 2012, we were really looking at this issue, these two issues, this tension, this disconnect between the spirit in the nation that wanted to serve veterans and the outcomes. We started what we call the Green Zone Initiative. We kicked it off back in April of 2012, and the idea was, how do we study this problem? How do we look at this problem in a logical way and come up with policies to improve outcomes at the state level? Notice we're not talking about federal policies. We're talking about doing it here at home where we can have an impact, where we can make a difference. So we started the Green Zone Initiative in the development phase. I'm a junior Army officer, so everything has to be in phases. I prefer threes. You'll hear threes a lot as we move forward here. We started with the development phase. We started with an environmental scan, a needs assessment of the veteran community. We didn't get a lot of responses, about 200, but enough where we could see where the gaps in services were in the state, geographic as well as services provided, and where the overlaps were. Where were we duplicating efforts and expending resources where we didn't need to? And so after the development phase, or at the end of the development phase, we wrote an action plan, just a basic strategic planning document that lays out our vision, our mission, strategic priorities, our goals, and our expected outcomes, how we would measure our success after 1 year. We based that on we based all of our work on three basic assumptions. The first one you've already heard me talk about. It's that tension. We assume the sea of goodwill exists and that that's a good thing, but it also presents a challenge. If the sea of goodwill really is a sea, as the metaphor describes it, then how does a person navigate that sea by themselves? So we believe that the sea of goodwill exists and that it is as much an opportunity as it is a challenge. The second of our assumptions was that veterans too often, returning to their community and existing to their community, are seen as victims and are seen as broken. We saw that as a huge barrier that kept coming up in our discussions with private employers who wanted to hire veterans and with service providers as well. And we said our assumption is going to be that veterans returning to our community, especially in 2012, when we were at the height of the economic downturn, they should be offered an opportunity to thrive, and they should be offered an opportunity to help Nevada thrive. In other words, veterans returning to our communities in our states are value added. They're not a burden to the systems, they're value added. And our third assumption was that, back to that those federal programs I was talking about earlier, they're great, and they exist, right? But at the end of the day, we don't really have any influence over them. Those are going to be decided by political programs and discussions going on in Washington, D.C. If we were going to have an impact, we had to do it from the bottom up, not the top down. So building on those three basic assumptions, we looked at all of the services within the Sea of Goodwill. Those services basically break down into three areas: education, employment, and wellness. So we set out in August of 2013, about 6 months after we started, we initiated the actual implementation phase, the first implementation phase, and we aimed towards immediate successes. How do we get quick wins in these three areas so that we can build on those for the next implementation phase? And we're in the third implementation phase now. The first success was the establishment of the Interagency Council on Veterans Affairs. This was established by executive order and subsequently created in statute, so it's an ongoing group of subject matter experts, agency directors at the state level, the governor's cabinet, who, much like the president's cabinet reporting on how they're serving veterans on a regular basis, it's the governor doing the same thing with his cabinet. We worked with local communities. That was a great success. The first was a great success. The next one, not so much a success at all. But we wanted to establish community councils at the local level as well, headed up by local leaders, veteran organizations as well. That phase was not terribly successful. Some communities really ran with it, and most did not. And that has run its course, and we've replaced it with a concept. We just signed an MOU with the Nevada National Guard and their Joining Community Forces program to replace that. In the education focus area, the governor created the Student Veterans Advisory Council. What better way to figure out how we can improve outcomes for student veterans than actually asking student veterans? That's going to be a theme, by the way. Asking the person the service is intended for so that we can improve the way we deliver services. Hopefully it's not just a theme today, but at every one of these breakfasts that we have going forward. There were others. We created the Veteran Suicide Prevention Task Force to work on wellness issues, some of the tragedies that are facing our state and our service members as well. And then for the employment focus area, we received a generous grant from the Nevada Military Support Alliance to establish the Green Zone Employer Program, which is a veteran-friendly employment program that I'd love to talk to you more about, but I'm already at 13 minutes. Finally, to tie all of this together, we created the Green Zone Network, right? So I like redundancy. I like threes, I like phases, and I like redundancy. Green Zone Network, the Green Zone Initiative, everything we were doing was branded under that. The Green Zone Network was our answer to Facebook, and let me tell you, if you're a budding entrepreneur, I don't encourage you to compete with Facebook when it comes to your business model. We established the Green Zone Network as Nevada's specific online social networking site. It's been successful to a degree, but we certainly would like for it to grow more. Over the subsequent implementation phase over the last year, leading up to December of 2014, we leveraged that initial architecture to receive over millions of dollars, not over $1 million, millions of dollars in grants, including grants for the community college system here in the state of Nevada, not us, but they leveraged the Green Zone Initiative to do that. Grants for the Nevada National Guard, and grants for the Office of the Governor and the Nevada Department of Veteran Services and others as well. Governor Sandoval signed a proclamation in January of 2014 establishing the Year of the Veteran in Nevada to truly drive the conversation at a time when we truly needed leadership at the highest level in the state to say we will become the most military and veteran-friendly state in the nation. He signed 10 executive orders at that time, unprecedented amount of support from the governor's office to establish pilot programs and implement recommendations during the Year of the Veteran. Probably least importantly, he hired me to come into his office to run this program. I started in August of 2013, right as we launched this program, and we've been working on this for about 1.5 years since. So my job was to manage that Year of the Veteran initiative, to implement the governor's plan, to ensure that we were reaching the audiences we needed to reach, and to make sure that service providers around the state were discussing veteran services in terms of becoming the most military and veteran-friendly state in the nation. We worked on various policy councils. We got some members of our various policy councils here today, and we published a comprehensive Veterans Legislative Reform Report, 226 pages. I'm going to start reading right now. It's riveting stuff. 6 policy councils, a Veterans Legislative Symposium, recommendations from the veteran community, from the Nevada Department of Veteran Services, and 3 studies that were needs assessments on how we can improve services to veterans. It was comprehensive veterans legislative reform was the goal, and we're now in the legislative phase right now where we can implement that. One of the councils that was created during the year, actually prior to the Year of the Veteran, but carried out through the Year of the Veteran, was the Student Veterans Advisory Council. We have some members here. Raise your hand if you were on that council with us today. A couple up here, Tim Blues down here. And so we established, the governor established that, and the idea was to get veterans at the colleges and universities in the state of Nevada to provide their input on legislative recommendations. And I'll tell you, we got a bill coming up next week that carries 2 of their recommendations, had a direct impact on policy outcomes in the state of Nevada. And they are a part of the broader discussion as well in that book I just discussed. As we were working on that, we were traveling around the state. We went down to Las Vegas. We visited the four schools down there, including the University of Phoenix. We went to Elko, and in February of 2014, the whole group came up here to Reno. I'd had this idea for a networking breakfast. I'd been discussing it for a while, for a long time, with a lot of folks. Eden Dunkelberger, my friend and brilliant strategist here, took me through some steps to really test it. We had this idea for this breakfast right here, and we wanted to start carrying it off. I was anxious. I wanted to do it by the summer of 2014. So we started talking with the group about it, and we held our first actual informal breakfast in February of 2014. Troy and his team from Vital and the VA put together a little breakfast for us at Jack's Cafe in South Reno. The group got together, about 11 of us at the time, very informally. We ate some great breakfast there, talked a lot, drank a lot of coffee, and decided that we were going to do it again. We were going to keep trying to do that and build it into something greater. I wanted to push it though. I said, we need to have this breakfast right here, not the smaller breakfast among the group, by June of 2014. The group basically humored me for the first few months as we continued to talk about it. And by May of 2014, our report was done. Our official duties as the Student Veterans Advisory Council were over. We'd submitted our report and we were ready for that discussion. And I started re-engaging on what I was calling, wait for it, the Green Zone Networking Breakfast, right? Because it has to fit all of our other branding. So the group came back to me and they said, well, we think that's an ambitious timeline. I'm being polite, right? We have a broad audience here. So they thought that we had an ambitious timeline to launch this by June of last year. So I said, well, why don't we do what we've been doing with Jack's Cafe and the other smaller breakfasts? Why don't we do that again and try to broaden it a little bit? So in June of last year, we went to a local establishment owned by a member of the Nevada National Guard, the 1864 Tavern. He opened his doors for us, brought in breakfast for us, and about 18 of us showed up that time. It was members, it was a bigger group than we'd had before. Vital, members of the Vital team, VA staff, active members of the reserve component here, spouses, student veterans, all of us sat around and we had a great discussion, probably one of the most meaningful discussions about what we wanted to do with the Engaged Breakfast, still called the Green Zone Networking Breakfast at the time. We decided at that time that by June that what we wanted to do was really do this right here. We did want to have a networking breakfast. We did want to start meeting on a monthly basis. We did want to have a Rotary-style breakfast where veterans could network. But really what we were talking about at that time were what they wanted to do, what the student veterans wanted to do. They wanted a professional networking environment. They wanted a place where they could showcase their leadership, where they could showcase their sense of service, the spirit of service that they carried with them in the military and they brought back to their community, and where they could engage directly with community service providers. I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit in my notes. We had that conversation, and shortly thereafter they broke the news to me. Calling it the Green Zone Networking Breakfast was my thing, not their thing. We needed to call it something else. I agree, it made sense. But we didn't have a name yet, so we just put a question mark on the board. Over the next few months, we started to identify leaders within that group of 18 that initially met, and we started meeting about once a week. We started really identifying, okay, this is what we want, how do we get there? How do we write a vision for what we want to do? How do we write a strategic plan for what we want to do? Over the course of the next few months, by September, Mr. Zach Todens had stepped forward and the group decided that he would be the leader of the group as far as the student veteran voice in the planning committee was concerned. We would meet regularly, and then the group would again meet monthly. We came up with a very, very, very formal mentorship and network program, not what you'll see today. And because I was on the committee that was planning it, part of that mentorship program was that each member of the network in this very formal network would sign up, and a part of their application process would be a profile on the Green Zone Network, because that's what I need, right? I needed participation in that. We eventually said they also need a LinkedIn page and a personal purpose statement. We would run them through an interview process. We all think there's value in all of this still. Run them through an interview process and find out, do they want to be a part of the active membership? Do they have a 3 to 6 month goal that they want to accomplish, that we can direct them to a mentor and drive them toward that goal as much as we can, help them do that. Eventually we realized, again, by November of last year, that not only were we not going to call it the Green Zone Networking Breakfast, we weren't going to require people who participated to get a Green Zone Network profile, that we weren't going to require an application process, that what we really wanted as a veteran community was this right here, an opportunity to get together with members of the community, people who are interested in meeting veterans, knowing veterans, people who are interested in getting to know what veterans bring to the table, and really to showcase the leadership of this community that's here today. So here we are at Engage, the Engage Breakfast, coming full circle from where we started, not even full circle, 180 degrees from where we started. Something that was tied to my needs as a state bureaucrat to bring together the veteran community with service providers. Something that started out as something that was branded under a state program called the Green Zone Initiative. Something that required participants to participate in the state program, the Green Zone Network, to this here today. And I think what you'll find is a much, much more informal network, much less driven by my needs as a service provider and much more driven by the student veterans who provided the insights that have given us the opportunity to be here today. We want to provide a place for veterans to showcase their ability to lead within the community, for their ability to showcase their ability to serve within the community, so that they can show their value. That's what we desire Engage to be. We really want Engage to be an opportunity for us as veterans to get together, to get to know one another, and to open our networks up to one another. If you're a veteran in this room and you're looking for a job with the state of Nevada, I might be a good person to go to for that. I'm not saying that arrogantly or sarcastically. I'd be a good person to go to for that. If you're looking for a job with the federal government, Troy Storman is your guy right here. He can show you which side of the DD-214 stand. He can tell you what numbers not to call when you want to change your address with the VA. He can tell you everything you need to know about federal employment. In fact, he's done it many times, just as we've helped veterans here in our network get jobs in the private sector as well. At Engage, we believe in market principles. We're just going to put it flatly. We've got a finance major who's the president of this program here, and we believe that if you are a service provider, and no offense to the people who are creating tremendous services, you'll see I'm talking about us too. If you're a service provider, your service must be relevant. Think about the Green Zone Network. One of the reasons it has not taken off to the level we want it to is because it hasn't been relevant to the needs of the veterans who are looking for services. It's not our intention, it's something we stood up directly to do, or it's one of the reasons we directly stood it up was to meet those needs. But we're not done yet. We're going to keep working on it. We're going to keep tweaking it. So we ask here today that in the spirit of market principles, if you're a service provider here today, if you're an employer here today, please come with that mentality in mind. What services do you provide, and why are they relevant to your audience? Let me tell you what we mean by that. The way you find out relevance is not by telling people your service. It's about asking people where they are, who they are, what they want to be, where they want to be. So we can engage and allow the veterans to drive the conversation. This is not happening around the country. I'll tell you, as somebody who's been serving veterans for 7 years, it rarely comes from the bottom up, one of our founding assumptions. If you're a veteran here today, and you are looking for a job, or you're looking for involvement, engagement in the community, same rules apply for you. You have to figure out what skills, attitudes, and resources you bring to the table that are relevant to private sector, public sector employers. That's on you. That's why the tagline for this event, which you haven't seen yet because we don't have any of our graphics, is meet us halfway. We'll come to the table, you come to the table. And that's incumbent upon us all of us as veterans here in this room. It also applies to us as the Engage Network. We will not have this meeting this size, this full. We're proud of the turnout today. We won't do this every month if we can't maintain relevance to the service provider community and the veteran that's looking for those services or looking to be a leader. We hold ourselves to the same standard that we ask others to hold themselves to. Again, if you're a service provider here today, you're welcome. We ask you to bring friends. We want you to be a part of our network. Because as we get to know veterans who are in this network, and we get to find out what they want to do, what they want to be, how they want to grow in this community, how they want to lead, how they want to serve this community, we want to be able to say, yeah, we know exactly who you need to talk to. Come to the next networking breakfast and talk to Glenna Smith. She can help you with that problem. We want you to be a part of our network. We also want you to ask people where they are. Ask people where they are. Worry about their growth and where they want to be. It's not about how many people are signing up for the Green Zone Network. For the veterans, get to know people who can help you and who you can direct others to. Get to know organizations that you can serve, not just that can serve you. Get to know how you can be a leader in this community and engage in our network. Again, our motto is meet us halfway. We think we've done that today, and after a year of planning and talking and kicking and screaming, these guys have pulled me to a place where we actually have something I believe that is going to be relevant to the veterans, the service providers, and the employers in our community. We're going to come together once a month, the first Friday of every month, and we're going to do this. We're going to have breakfast together, we're going to talk, We're going to engage together, as the title implies. We're going to figure out how we can serve one another and how we can help one another and how we can grow as a community. It'll be the first Friday of every month, right here in one of these rooms on this row here in Harris, who's hosting us. If you're wondering about the money, I'll tell you flat out, the money is going to defray some of the expenses for campus. It's not covering the whole thing, but part of meeting us halfway is putting a little skin in the game as well. That's something we believe in as a veteran community, and we hope you can understand what we're saying, what we mean by that. The next meeting will be on March 6, 2015, right here in one of these rooms. Attorney General Adam Laxalt will be our speaker. So like I said, it's getting better. You don't have to hear me drone every time. He is a Navy veteran. He took over as Attorney General on January 6th of this year, and he's going to be talking about some of his experiences and some of the things. I'm guessing he'll be talking about some of the veteran military related things that he'll be doing in his office as well. So please come back, bring a friend. Please help us plan for it by RSVPing. You know, if 10 more people showed up, we'd have to bring in more tables. So those little tags help us know how many people to expect, and most importantly, help us enjoy the opportunity to engage. So thank you very much for being here. And this program is over. So get to know one another, drink some coffee, and enjoy engaging with each other. Appreciate it.
Hey, Caleb, where's